Hello and welcome to The Critique.
Hey there.
Today we're looking at a commentary script about, well, the ongoing civil war in right-wing media, specifically Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes reacting to Candace Owens.
And her pivot into time travel, aliens, secret government projects. It's a lot.
It is a very wild ride of a topic, so let's just get right into the text.
Yeah, let's. I have to say, reading this draft, it felt a bit like walking through a funhouse mirror maze.
That's a good way to put it.
The source material is just inherently chaotic, right? We're talking about Sumerian technology and interdimensional demons here, and I think the writer got a little bit intoxicated by that chaos.
That is such a common trap. When you're critiquing something that's completely absurd, the temptation is to mirror that absurdity in your own writing. But that's exactly where this draft starts to struggle. I think a key theme for us today has to be about containment.
Okay.
The script really suffers from a circular narrative structure. It emphasizes repetition over, analytical progression.
I absolutely felt that loopiness. The writer keeps circling back to the exact same descriptors.
The spaghetti metaphor.
The spaghetti metaphor. It comes up like 3 or 4 times. And just the general insanity of it all. It felt like we were running in place.
Exactly. We get dream spaghetti and throwing spaghetti at the wall over and over. And look, I get the impulse. The writer wants to hammer home that Owens is just tossing things out there.
Sure, to see what sticks.
But using that metaphor as a crutch actually just stalls the whole narrative momentum.
Okay, but can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Please.
Isn't there an argument to be made that the repetition is kind of the point? Like maybe the writer is trying to simulate the fatigue of listening to this stuff. By forcing you to hear spaghetti again and again, you recreate that feeling of, oh my God, when does this end?
That's a very charitable reading. And I see the artistic intent there, but I think in execution, it just reads as a lack of focus.
Okay.
If you're writing a commentary script, your job is to synthesize the fatigue, not replicate it for the listener. The text jumps from, say, the Charlie Kirk time traveler theory.
Right.
Then over to the reaction from Jones, then back to the spaghetti, then on to another claim about the Matrix. It feels like we're just revisiting the same rooms in a house instead of walking down a hallway toward an exit.
A hallway. I like that visual. So if we want to build that hallway, how do we linearize this? I mean, the source material itself is totally nonlinear.
Owens' claims are all over the place. You have to impose order on the disorder. It's the only way. I think the most effective way to handle this draft would be to reorganize it into 3 distinct movements, a really strict linear progression.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you need a dedicated block that just clearly defines all the specific allegations Owens made. Just get them all out on the table.
So instead of sprinkling the crazy theories throughout the script, you just group them?
Exactly. Create a wall of evidence. Right now, we hear about the Egyptian plane in paragraph 2. Then much later, we get matrix monitoring. And then way at the end, something about Sumerian remote viewing.
It is very scattered. You have to keep resetting your context.
Yeah, and if you stack them, if you just say, she claimed X and Y and Z all in one breath, it actually hits so much harder. It forces the listener to confront the sheer magnitude of this pivot all at once.
I see. It's about economy of impact.
Precisely. You group the evidence into one paragraph of insanity. That's your first movement. Then your second movement is the opposition.
So Jones and Fuentes.
Right. Present their counterargument. Their whole thing is basically that she's self-destructing, that she's finally gone too far.
Which leads to the third movement, the synthesis.
The synthesis. And this is where the narrator delivers their unique rebuttal about cult psychology. That structure immediately turns the script from a rant into like a debate. Proposition, opposition, synthesis.
That makes so much sense. And it completely solves the spaghetti problem.
It does.
You can use that metaphor once, right at the start, maybe as a framing device for that Charlie Kirk Project Looking Glass section to show the chaos, and then you just drop it.
You don't need to keep reminding us it's spaghetti. We know. Once you've established the premise, you have to advance the argument. When the writer says it just continues to grow and grow for the 3rd time, it signals to me that we haven't actually moved past the initial observation.
We're just pointing at the mess instead of explaining it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we fixed the structure. We build our hallway. I still think there's another barrier to entry here. And for me, it's one of tone. I noticed a lot of, very specific vocabulary choices that gave me pause.
You are definitely referring to the insult.
Yeah. I mean, look, I get it. The subject matter is ridiculous. It's easy to get frustrated. But when I read terms like dingbats, sycophants, nutjob, and absolute joke, I felt like I was reading a YouTube comment, not a script.
It is a major issue. The use of these colloquial insults and,
ad hominem attacks completely undermines the sophisticated psychological point the author is actually trying to make.
It really does.
It just lowers the editorial authority of the piece immediately.
But let me play devil's advocate again, though. If the target audience for this is people who already despise these figures, doesn't that language kind of bond the narrator to the listener? It's like, hey, we're all saying here, look at these dingbats.
That's the risk, right? It might bond you to the choir, but you're alienating the whole congregation. If you want to write a piece that actually dissects the media landscape, you have to assume there are neutral listeners out there.
Or at least listeners who want to be treated like adults.
Right. If I'm a neutral party who's just interested in right-wing infighting, and I hear the narrator call the audience sycophants, I just interpret that as emotional bias.
It frames the whole thing as a rant.
Correct. It signals that the narrator is maybe too angry to be analytical. And the tragedy is the underlying argument that these audiences are conditioned to reject mainstream truth is actually brilliant.
It is.
But it gets buried under all the playground insults.
So how do we keep the sharpness without the pettiness? Because we don't want to make it boring. It shouldn't sound like some academic paper.
You elevate the vocabulary to match the seriousness of the actual argument, the cult deprogramming part. You can still be harsh. In fact, analytical harshness is often more devastating than just name-calling.
Okay, give me an example. How do we fix sycophants?
Well, sycophants implies they're just inherently bad people. It's totally dismissive.
Right.
Instead, what about something like ideologically vulnerable audience, or maybe devoted adherents?
Oh, ideologically vulnerable. That's interesting. That's really interesting because it implies a mechanism.
Exactly.
It explains why they're fans. They aren't just sick, they're susceptible to something.
Yes, it turns a judgment into a diagnosis. And look at Jones and Fuentes, instead of calling them dingbats, which just creates this cartoonish image of harmless idiots.
Right.
Describe them as competing faction or unreliable critics.
Competing faction leaders. Wow. That immediately raises the stakes. Faction leaders implies they have real power and that they're losing control of that power. That's a story. Dingbats is just noise.
Exactly. And this connects directly to the Moonies reference in. Did you catch that?
I did. It says, her dreams, the Moonies cult just continues to grow. It felt like a total throwaway line. Just a quick jab.
It is a throwaway line right now, but it shouldn't. This is a massive opportunity to bolster the actual argument.
Okay.
Instead of just using Moonies as a slur, the writer should explicitly draw parallels between the isolation tactics Nick Fuentes talks about and known cult indoctrination methods.
That is a fascinating pivot. So instead of just saying, haha, they're like a cult, you say, like the Unification Church, Owens is actively creating an environment where any external critique is viewed as a demonic attack.
Precisely. Now you've turned an insult into a sociological observation. You've moved the piece from, I hate these people, to I understand how this mechanism works, and that respects the intelligence of the listener.
It also sets up the ending so much better, which I know we'll get to. But before that, I really want to talk about clarity, because even if we fix the structure and the tone, there were moments in this script where I genuinely didn't know who was speaking.
The attribution problem. Yeah.
The boundary between the narrator's voice and the summarized views of Jones and Fuentes is just so blurry at times. In a script that deals with layers of reality, what Owens thinks, what Jones thinks she thinks, and what the narrator thinks about all of it, clarity is absolute king.
There's that specific section about Mitch Snow and Erica Kirk that highlights this perfectly. The text reads, and then also how Erica Kirk knew about Fortuca. Mitch Snow wasn't wrong.
I read that 3 times. I had no idea what it meant. Does the narrator believe Mitch Snow wasn't wrong? Or is the narrator saying that Owens believes that? Or is it sarcasm?
It just creates ambiguity where there has to be precision. And in a scripted audio piece, ambiguity is lethal. If your listener has to rewind to figure out who's making the claim, you've broken the spell.
It happens again with the Jay Dyer reference. This one really tripped me up. The text says, I saw Jay Dyer yesterday with a post about this, and he does satire sometimes. I thought it was a joke. Sheesh. Oh my God. Oh, okay. Wow. And again, that's premeditated.
It's pure stream of consciousness writing.
It is. And that phrase, he does satire sometimes, is doing so much heavy lifting there. Is the narrator saying Jay Dyer was doing satire and Owens missed it? Or that he's a source of disinformation? I couldn't tell.
The writer is relying on the audience having the exact same background knowledge they do. They're just assuming we all know Jay Dyer's whole shtick.
Right.
The suggestion here is pretty simple. Use distinct signposting phrases. You have to separate the source material's claims from the narrator's analysis, especially with these high-concept conspiracies.
So we just need to be more explicit, like Jones argues X, whereas Owens claims Y.
Exactly. For that J. Dyer section, a clearer sentence fixes it instantly. Something like, Owens seemingly mistook J. Dyer's satire for factual intel, validating a joke as if it were a leak.
That is instantly so much clearer. It tells us what happened. A mistake was made by the subject. The original text feels like the narrator is discovering the mistake in real time. Oh, wow. Okay, wow.
Real-time discovery can work for a Twitch stream. It does not work for a crafted commentary.
No.
The audience expects the narrator to have already done the homework. You're supposed to be the guide holding the flashlight. If you're stumbling around in the dark saying, wow, look at that, the audience loses confidence in you.
That's a great analogy. The narrator needs to be the one holding the flashlight, not the one tripping over the roots in the dark.
Okay, let's move to the final and I think maybe the most important critique. This is about the so what of the piece, the central thesis.
The cult argument.
Yes, the single most insightful argument in this entire script, that Jones and Fuentes are using a rational actor model to judge a completely irrational cult phenomenon, is currently buried. It's hidden under all the drama of the conspiracies themselves.
I really want to emphasize this point because this is where the gold is. The writer has identified a fundamental misunderstanding between the subjects. Jones and Fuentes think if Candace sounds crazy, she loses money and clout.
That's the rational market view.
Right, but the narrator knows, no, if Candace sounds crazy, she gains loyalty.
That is the core conflict, but right now, the script spends so much time just marveling at the absurdity of the alien and time traveler claims that it completely distracts from that stronger point.
I worried about this with that vomiting cotton candy anecdote. The narrator spends a fair bit of time describing this map of portals and saying, I feel sick looking at it. And it's a funny image, but does it actually serve the thesis?
It might actually undermine it because the narrator feels sick, but the whole point is that her fans don't feel sick. They feel validated. They feel special because they think they can decode the map.
So we need to pivot the whole script. The conspiracy theories shouldn't be the main focus. They should just be the evidence for the cult's thesis.
Exactly. Instead of saying, look how crazy this is, you say, look at how this specific crazy claim functions as a loyalty test.
That's a huge shift in perspective. So practically speaking, what do? Do we cut the cotton candy line?
I'd say shorten it or repurpose it. Use it to contrast your reaction with the fans' reaction. I felt sick looking at this map. But for her followers, this complexity is proof of hidden knowledge.
Ah, that connects the visceral feeling to the intellectual analysis.
Yes, and then that leads us to the ending. The current draft ends with these really open questions. Why does anyone watch both of them? And I'm still trying to work out why people watch me.
Yeah, it's a weak closing. It feels like the writer just ran out of steam.
The frustrating part is that the narrator has the answer. The evidence provided earlier in the script about truth setting people free, about cult deprogramming, that is the answer.
So don't ask the question, answer it.
And not a period, not a question mark. They watch because the truth sets people free narrative has been weaponized. That is a powerful closing statement.
That also resolves the tension with Nick Fuentes. The script mentions that Nick wants her to keep going because he thinks she'll implode. He thinks she's committing career suicide.
The narrator should explicitly contrast that hope with the reality. Construct the climax of the piece around that irony. Fuentes believes she is destroying herself with these alien claims. He is wrong. She is purifying her bait.
That turns the script from just another reaction video into a sociological essay. It gives the listener a takeaway that applies way beyond just Candace Owens or Alex Jones. It explains a mechanism of modern media.
And that's the goal, right? We want the listener to walk away understanding the world a little better, not just knowing that Candace Owens said something weird about ancient Egypt again.
It really feels like the writer has all the pieces here. They clearly know the subject matter inside and out. They know the lore, they know who Mitch Snow is, they know the dynamics. The expertise is there.
The expertise is absolutely there. It's just about organizing that expertise into a weapon instead of a pile.
A pile of spaghetti?
A pile of spaghetti, exact. We just want to untangle the noodle so we can see the individual strands.
You know, if the writer implements these changes, especially the structural grouping of the conspiracies, it's going to free up a lot of word count.
A ton.
They won't have to keep saying, and another thing she said was.
And with that freed up word count, they can expand on the cult parallel. They can actually explain how deprogramming works rather than just saying it takes a long time.
That would be so valuable. Just a brief sentence or two on the difficulty of exiting a high-control group would add so much weight to the claim that her fans are stuck. It makes that vulnerable audience point land even harder.
It validates the point without using the insult. It frames them as victims of a psychological process which is far more compelling. Tragedy is always more engaging than mockery in the long run.
I completely agree. Mockery is cheap sugar, tragedy is protein.
So, let's recap where we've landed for the writer. We have a script that is just rich in detail and source knowledge, but is currently struggling with a circular structure and a tone that undercuts its own intelligence.
Right. We want to see the narrative linearized. Allegations first, then the counter-arguments, then the rebuttal.
And we want clear signposting so we always know who is saying what. No more, wait, is this satire, confusion. And finally, we want the central thesis, that cult psychology argument, to be the star of the show, not the alien.
The aliens are just the props. The psychology is the plot.
That is the perfect summary. To the writer, you have a really strong foundation here. The insights regarding the rational actor fallacy are excellent. We invite you to apply these lenses, specifically the tone shift and structural reorganization, and submit the revised draft for a follow-up critique.
I really want to read the version of this script that treats the subject with the terrifying seriousness it probably deserves. I think it could be definitive.
Me too. Thank you for listening, and keep writing.